it's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Garland W. Mahan, CHBC, EA, RTRP, and Chris Mahan, CHBC, MBA, ACC. You'll have to explain what all that means. They're in Nashville, Tennessee. Garland and Chris Mahan, whose company Mahan Associates, LLC, in Nashville, that have been serving the healthcare community for collectively over 50 years. They specialize exclusively in the dental and medical market space, have a dynamic and complementary service model where all things are coordinated for the most optimal financial and practice development outcomes possible. Their company provides distinguished service lines that are essential to all practice businesses. They provide financials and write-up services, tax strategies and tax services, practice management services, payroll and HR services, pension and retirement planning services, and financial planning services. With coordinating all these separate but necessary disciplines, they are able to offer a competitive advantage to their clients by integrating all business services and objectives to work in a competitive manner. Today, they will be discussing their core disciplines that affect all of us dentists, that is taxes, what initiatives and strategies need to be considered to save tax dollars. I believe it was you who taught me that taxes is the most we'll ever spend anything on in our entire lives, more than house, car, kids, everything. Is taxes really what Americans spend the most money on?
Yeah, the clientele that we work with, in healthcare, that will be their number one expense that they have in their lifetime.
Even higher than alimony?
It depends on their lawyers.
By the way, you guys had me speak at your annual meeting in Nashville last year, and I'm telling you, you have the most raving fans. So many dentists told me their stories of what you've done for them and how awesome you are. I mean, you walk on water with your clientele. That you got to be very proud of that.
Well, we are. I think we do a lot of hand-holding with our clients to help them through, because they're so focused on their practice every day and they didn't go to school. They didn't go to business school. They went to dental school. So this is where we help them to help them focus. That's why we concentrated our services just for the doctor.
Well, my father used to sing a song to me when I was little. We were driving to work, and he'd say, the easiest dollar earned is $1 in expenses saved. The second easiest dollar earned is $1 in taxes delayed. And the hardest damn dollar you're ever going to earn is to go out there and work and sell and collect another dollar. So live below your means and try to avoid taxes and delay taxes. And that's what you guys are into. What do you think the average dentist listening to you right now in the United States doesn't understand about their taxes? What are some of the common mistakes that you've been treating over your combined 50 years of doing this?
Yeah, Howard, that's a great question. I think the number one lesson is that they can control a lot of their destiny in terms of what they pay in taxes. The tax code has many opportunities that if they're instructed and taught and shown how to apply those deductions and strategies, they can materially reduce their tax liability for the current years and years to come. I mean, Garland can go in, and most clients that we look at, he'll go in and do an assessment of their tax returns, and we'll typically audit 2 to 3 years to go get missed deductions where they just didn't even apply some of the easy breezy tax deductions. So they're leaving money on the table.
For example.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when a dentist tells me that they're on top of their taxes, I'm like, dude, the U.S. tax code, according to Wikipedia right now, is 73,954 pages. My question to you is, why the hell is the tax code damn near 75,000 pages long? And there's no way any dentist could understand 75,000 pages of the IRS tax code. Why do you think the tax code is so complicated in the United States? Why do you think it's 75,000 pages long?
Well, I think that goes back up to Washington and getting the Democrats and Republicans to sit down together and really look at serious simplification. That would be number one. That I think that our leaders, are the ones that are making the laws, they're just not sitting down and communicating. The second reason is the tax code that we have in the United States, since we are such a free society, is the number one way that our lawmakers can control us. They get us to spend money in directions that they want us to spend. And that's what the tax code helps manipulate by and large.
Yeah, it's social engineering, isn't it? They want you to buy a house, so they deduct the interest when so many people shouldn't even be in a house. They should be liquid. They should be in an apartment, a condo, a rental, because these millennials, the average, my generation, they graduated from high school, got a job at Boeing, and then retired there when they were 65. The average millennial, even at the 4 greatest companies in America, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, their average employee is 2 years, and Amazon's closer to 1. So why should that person who's going to be jumping around their whole life, why should they be in a house? But the tax code is social engineering, isn't it?
We feel that it is. We get to ask this question all the time, like you just asked, why is it so complicated? And the 2 reasons that I can come up with are the ones that I just said. Our leaders sitting down and having honest communication, and they want to still be able to have the ability to manipulate us and to move money the way they want to move money.
So let's go through all these services that you do. So so first you provide financials and write-up services. When I'm out there in the field lecturing, I only meet like one dentist every 3 to 4 months that knows the difference between a statement of cash flow, a balance sheet, and a statement of income, a P&L, profit and loss. They don't know. They don't even know the 3 basic counting deals. So how do you handle clients that really, in the bottom of their heart, want to be sitting at an implant course learning how to place an implant, and you're sitting there talking about a statement of cash flow?
That's a good question, Howard. What our job and as Garland has worked with our clients and what we try to strive to deliver is to make it mean something. If I looked at a 3D image, or if I looked at probing depths, I wouldn't know what any of that meant. But whenever the dentist makes it mean something and explain what it means to me, is where it builds value. So, there's all kinds of guys out there that can do financial statements for their clients. But what we strive to do is to show them what the value is inherently with those financial statements. And we customize our financial statements where they make sense and they measure certain key performance metrics of the practice, so we can always be an asset to them optimizing their profitability on their financials and the like.
So what is your tax strategy for dentists? And by the way, before you continue, I just want to keep telling dentists over and over and over that in 1900, there were no medical specialties and healthcare was only 1% of the GDP. By 2000, it was 14% of the GDP with 58 specialties, and dentistry had 9. And now at 2017, it's 17% of the specialties. Every dentist out there knows that an endodontist can do better endo than a general dentist. They all know that a dentist shouldn't be delivering your babies or removing your prostate cancer. And then when they go to use a CPA, they go to their church pastor and say, is there any, who would you recommend? And they recommend a really nice, moral, ethical man or woman accountant, but they don't know crap about dentistry. I ask every dentist, when I see him, I say, how many dentists does your CPA do? And they never know. And I say, well, if someone's going to do a bypass on me, I'd want to know how many they've done. If they say, well, actually, Howard, you're my first bypass, I'd run. The power of using someone who focuses on dentistry is just beyond huge, isn't it?
We think so. That's why we set the firm up the way we did. Is, you can't be all things to all people. But boy, we thought, how unique would it be to gather a lot of disciplines under one roof and focus them just for the healthcare practice. And that's what we've tried to do here. And there's no doubt, because we focus so much on the dentist and physician, that we're able to immediately assess and look at their situation and look at the opportunities that they have before them. We do things that other tax preparers, you would say, or even tax strategists, that's a whole discussion in itself, don't even think about doing, because we are always focusing on what can you do in this practice. We don't concern ourselves what Joe's Pipe Shop and what we can do with Joe's Pipe Shop. We just work with the healthcare professional, so we've been able to fine tune our tax strategies for them and look to discover new ones that fit them.
Do you do it all over the phone and online, or do you like to see your clients in the flesh once a year?
Let me answer this one. This guy is the go-to-meeting Skype guy. I'm the sit in front of you guy. Now, obviously, you can tell there's a difference in our age, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, the behind-the-scenes story of this podcast that we do, Dentistry Uncensored, is I cannot tell you how many times we schedule an appointment to do a podcast, and the dentist is 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and it might take us 3 hours over the phone just to he thought he was going to go to Skype.com. He didn't know he had to download anything, and so yeah, it's definitely a generation thing. But I'll tell you what, seriously, my 3 favorite streets in America. If I'd rather go visit you over the in the flesh, because I wouldn't want to go to, because you're in Nashville. I mean, my 3 favorite streets are Bourbon Street in New Orleans, greatest music ever. Bill Street in Memphis, greatest music ever, and 2nd Avenue in Nashville. I mean, I would be your client if I lived in Alaska, because who the hell wouldn't want to go to Nashville? I mean, it is really a hot tourist place. And let me tell you something out there. I know what some of you guys are thinking. Nah, I don't like country music. Dude, everyone loves country music when you're in Nashville, and it's not that twangy stuff you heard when you were a little kid with your mom and dad in Kansas. I mean, it is just rockin' hot. And if you don't like the band, all you got to do is go next door. I mean, it's band after band, live band after band for what, like 6 blocks on both sides of the street?
Yeah, it's a good time down there.
Oh, yeah, and the police are on your side, too. That's what I noticed. When somebody's drunk and falling down and being a goof, they're trying to help him get a taxi. They're not even arrested. They're just like, come on, buddy, let's get you back to the hotel. But I love Nashville. And one of the greatest vacations I ever sent my mom on was to Opryland, USA. And oh my God, she was in heaven, sitting in that atrium for a week. Just oh my God, she still talks about that. But so do you have long out-of-state clients that fly down there just to see you for a day or two? How long is that meeting? Is it a 1-day meeting, a 4 hours, a 2-day? What's it like for a long-distance client coming to visit you in the flesh?
Typically, we have a program called Genesis Financial Pathway, and when they come in, they will come in and we will have a program all laid out, and it'll look at all phases of their financial life. And we start all the way up at practice revenue and go all the way down to estate planning. And when we have those type of clients, then it will be pretty much a day-long process with some breaks, obviously, in those.
How long is the Genesis Financial Pathway course lecture?
Go ahead. This was Chris's brainchild, by the way.
Well, yeah, again, with our Genesis Financial Pathway, it really capsulizes all of our services into one and ties it up with the financial planning. So it's a more intensive, day and a half a year engagement when they come in, and as Garland was speaking to, look at everything from their business optimization, their retirement planning, their kids' savings accounts, college savings accounts, financial strategies, investment, real estate, tax strategies, asset protection, and all of that good stuff. So that's the big service engagement. We'll fly them down and we'll put them up at the Opryland Hotel and show them all the good places to go. And then we have clients, they subscribe, to our financials, write up pension and tax work from the business side on an annual basis. That can be a 2 or 3 hour meeting, and they'll fly in, get out, and then they get to go play all weekend.
And sometimes we go to them in other states as well. Not to mention all the, the Middle Tennessee individuals we serve.
You know what? I think the best marketing you could do is put up an online CE course on that. That you'd share a lot of information, you educate a lot of homies, and I'm sure you'd get a lot of business out of it.
Yep.
When these dentists are coming out of school and they're going to start a practice or buy a practice, one of the first questions they always ask on Dental Town is what type of corporation? I mean, there's a wide variety of corporation types. What is best for dentists?
It depends on the state they're in, Howard. For the past 10, 20 years, our clients would Nashville would fly out to Scottsdale or Seattle or Miami and go to a seminar and come back and say, Garland Chris, I've got to be an S Corp. I need to set up an S Corp. And I would say, well, that's S Corp is a great modality, except in Tennessee, because Tennessee had a tax that was specific to dividends, distributions, and interest income.
Right.
So S Corps were not the best modality for Tennessee practices, but they were better for a lot of surrounding states. But again, it's about the state taxes, and if they have state taxes and regulations, LLCs, S Corps, anything but a C Corp, really.
Yeah, and we have C Corp is Incorporate Inc. INC.
Well, they're actually a PC, a professional corporation, but it's called a C chapter, where they're taxed at the corporate level, where an S chapter, a professional corporation, is taxed at the individual level via a K1 flow down. And one other thing that we look at, to add what Chris said, which is so true, is we look at the type of individuals and their temperament. There are some entities that have a very loose structure, which gives you flexibility, but it can also get you in trouble with paying taxes if you're a quarterly estimated taxpayer. If you're very strong discipline, that's a good way to go because you have flexibility. But if you feel like you lack that discipline, maybe having a more corporate model, professional corporation model, where you're an employee and you take out your taxes as you go, may be a better entity structure to be involved. So we not only look at the state, we look at the individual as well.
Well, the individual, I mean, I can tell you what my homies are. When the type of people that become a dentist, a lawyer, and a physician are already they've already decided they're gonna have a bigger house, a nicer car. They're not gonna go camping at the lake and fishing with worms. They're gonna fly to Hawaii. They're not gonna drive a Chevy or a Honda. They're gonna get a Lexus or a BMW. And the reason their beautiful wife married them wasn't for their hot looks and charming personality. It was because they wanted to marry a rich dentist, doctor, lawyer, and they're spenders. I seriously think it's the 80-20 rule. When I see dentists happy, healthy, laid back, they're going good, they live well below their means in their house, their car, and their vacations. And when I see them stressed out of their mind and depressed and crashing and start drinking and all this stuff like that, they just spend way too much. And it doesn't matter what you earn. It matters what you spend and what you save.
Amen. Amen. One of the best suggestions or financial advice you can ever give is what you just said earlier. Always try to live below your means.
Yeah. It's just a minimalistic lifestyle is so much less stress. I mean, you don't want to buy a boat. Can't you go find a friend with a boat and just show up with a case of beer? I mean, and why would you buy a cabin? You could just rent the damn thing. I mean, I know these people that have condos down in Rocky Point, Mexico, and up north in the mountains, and they go to each one once or twice a year, and they got to maintenance it and pay taxes on it, and it's like, God, just shed all that crap.
Yep. So true.
It was funny. It was a couple weeks ago. I think they had a thing where Einstein had his definition for happiness, Albert Einstein, and he gave it to a guy in Germany, I believe, as a tip, a waiter, because he didn't have any cash. He wrote it on a napkin, and it said, "Live a modest lifestyle below your means." It was the number one thing to have living a happy life. So if Albert Einstein said it, it's got to have some meat behind it.
Yeah, that guy is amazing. It's amazing how they still keep proving his theories a century after he's been gone. I mean, that is just absolutely, what a freak. Him and Sir Isaac Newton, those are the two that stand out the most in my mind. So you also do practice management. How many people actually work for you?
We have about 25 or 26 people.
Yeah.
Actually, we've been interviewing today.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, these guys are in beast mode. Talk about your practice management service, because the one thing I noticed about your team, they all adore you. They've been with you forever, and they were just sharp as a tack. What type of practice management services do you offer?
Well, Howard, with our practice management, again, we look at operations optimization, going through and ensuring that they're giving the best, patient experience, patient care. We look at their marketing from a 360 point of view. We look at, more importantly, the ROI and tracking their marketing. inside of our practice management. We look at their hygiene, productivity, and see how they're, if there's any opportunities there to increase, their ancillary production and efficiencies. We look at basically all the systems that they have in their practice. We help them implement incentive programs that we feel work to get the team on the same vision and be rewarded accordingly and move forward. And then we have a more customized kind of consults deal inside of our practice management, where let us say come in and give me a blanket assessment to look at our fee schedules, our perio mixes, our fluoride mixes, our hygiene productivity, our payer mixes, our revenue cycle management, and again how we're doing there. So we look at pretty much everything from top to bottom in the practice, and 9 times out of 10 can find some immediate opportunities for them to take advantage of.
Just one addition to that, and there's so many things that Chris and his team does because he works directly in that area more than I. But one area is that we get involved in internal controls because we all know and all dentists are very concerned about fraud and embezzlement in the practice. And it is a problem. There's no question. And we probably do at least on a yearly basis 4 or 5 internal reviews about do they have any fraud or embezzlement going on and what type of procedures can be set up to help protect against that.
What percent of dentists do you think, based on your combined half century of experience, what percent of dental offices right now today are being embezzled from?
Oh, golly. I would say easily over 50% would be what I would say.
50, 60%.
That is so amazing because every time I talk to a consultant, that's the number they say. They say when they go into an office, half the time they're being embezzled. And they also tell me that it was a lot harder when everything was paper checks on a pegboard system. But with all this digital technology, there's 100 ways to embezzle.
That is correct. It made it more difficult.
Have you noticed any type of pattern in the embezzlements?
They get more creative. Again, I can tell you that always close out month in every month, have static copies digitally or hard copies of your month in reports. But there's a lot of different ways embezzlement can go on now as well. They need to be looking at those patient refund checks that they cut every month and make sure that their front office hadn't named their boyfriend as a patient or cutting refund checks to them every quarter. Also look at their vendor checks. If they're not have somebody either themselves or have a third party reviewing a lot of that stuff, there's a lot of open holes that could unfortunately be taken advantage of.
What percent of the time in your experience is it one person doing it versus a couple in the office working like a pack of hyenas?
Most of the time it's one person.
Right.
Whenever it goes to 2 or more, it becomes complicated, and typically they'll leave a trail very soon, and it'll be picked up.
What I've noticed, the only time it's 2 is when a mother-daughter are working in the dental office.
Yeah.
That's the only time. And my gosh, so basically, would you say that if you create a series of systems where it would take at least 3 people in your office to embezzle, then you'll probably nip it in the butt. Would you agree?
The vast majority of times, yes. We feel like we can set up proper checks and balances, and if they're adhered to and monitored, that's the big problem that we run into, is we will go in and we will set up these systems, but yet we say, now you want us to come back in once or twice to ensure that they're being followed. And the dentist says, no, I know how to do it, I'm good, I'm okay. And a lot of times, the front office, they just start doing again what they want.
Right. Yeah, changing a habit is so hard to do. And the thing that I think is the saddest part of the embezzlement is every dentist I've talked to about it that's actually broke down and cried over it. It wasn't about the amount of money, even though it was a lot. It was the fact that that lady was his child's godmother at baptism. They went to the same high school. I mean, it was like it just broke their heart. I mean, it was kind of like how I felt when this Louis C.K. news broke out. I mean, he has been me and Ryan's favorite comedian for years. I mean, the guy is, and then you find out he's just a disgusting psycho animal. I mean, so it's the break of trust that really, really hurts.
That's right, Howard. Most of the time, it's somebody very close to the doc.
The funniest one, though, I ever saw was, and I've seen this one a couple of times, where the wife has decided that she's going to divorce her husband, but she goes along for years because every single month she's sending checks to the Bahamas, or one case was Sydney, Australia, and by the time the dentist figured out something was wrong, and then he found out she's embezzling, then the next day she just filed for divorce. Oh my God, what a double whammy to find out you've been taken to the cleaners and then divorced all in one day. Isn't that nice?
Yes.
So another big thing that's out new lately that wasn't out 30 years ago or 20 years ago, 10 years ago, there's a lot of these dashboard companies where they hook into your practice management system and they give you a dashboard of metrics. Are you big fans of any of those? Do you recommend any of those to your clients? Or
we work with VJ Sika and Sikasoft. I've been working with VJ since 2008. I also have some clients that utilize Dental Intel, and it's pretty cool. But I like those software platforms because that's very meaningful information that EagleSoft or Dentrix, have not plugged into their software that I've seen work very well. So again, Sikasoft, Dental Intel. There's a couple of other ones out there. Rick Williford started one out of Atlanta that I looked at a little bit. They all bring meaningful data.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Dentrix is out there in Provo, Utah, and there's just a dozen companies around them doing very well of all the things that Dentrix should have done themselves.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how, I mean, I can't think of how many companies have been started, how many consultants are even in business because of the lack of practice management information from EagleSoft and Dentrix. What if some kid was coming out of school, you see all these softwares and said, what practice management software system would you recommend? What would you tell them?
Open Dental is looking pretty slick right now. I've been historically a fan of EagleSoft for many years. But again, Open Dental, I like the Denticon platform as well, or Planet DDS. Seeing it works very, very fluid. So again, EagleSoft, Open Dental, and Planet DDS it depends on what they want to do. If they're going to be a standalone shop, again, a historically server-based modality may serve them. But if they're going to have more than one location, they got to find a truly functional enterprise edition that works out.
Well, after 30 years of using SoftDent.
Bless your heart.
What's that?
I said, bless your heart.
Oh my God. Well, I'm old. Back in the day, that was the mothership. I mean, that company was long before Dentrix and EagleSoft even existed. But I switched to Open Dental, and I have no financial connection or anything like that. But I'll tell you one thing that you should think about. Open Dental is the only practice management system in America that doesn't advertise because they don't need to. It's like, you don't see ads on TV for Facebook and Google, or Amazon, but Open Dental doesn't advertise. I mean, they have so much growth that, they're just trying to handle a controlled explosion of growth because everyone on Dental Town is just raving fans of Open Dental. I agree with that. Another thing they always ask, we start off with the basics, what type of corporation to get, talking about S Corp, LLC, C chapters, S chapter. Another one thing they ask is, what should overhead be? Go through the major line. What should their goal be for rent, mortgage, equipment, build out, computer, and all that stuff? And of course, starting with the big dog, labor. Start with the big dogs, labor, labs, supplies. What do you guys like to see? And then
like to see labor at 25%, and that's aggregate. So that'd be benefits, payroll taxes, and cost on labor expenses.
National average running or
27
right at
to 29.
27, yeah.
What's the highest? What are the highest 20? The 80-20 rule. What are the highest labor overhead in the top 20% that you're seeing?
Well, the highest that I've seen probably has been about 33%. That's the highest that I've personally seen. And that was a recent client, recent being within the last 2 to 3 years. And we now have got that trimmed down through various methods down to about 27.
Is it usually, do you reduce it usually by reducing head count or individual pay?
Yes and yes. Go ahead.
Well, there's a couple ways to reduce salaries and wages as a percentage of overhead. One is to reduce the salaries and wages, and the other is to increase the production and collections. So, I think you can get a balanced approach there, because they may come in and say, I've got one front office person, been here for 20 years, can't touch their pay, one hygienist and one assistant. Where do I cut? Because if I cut their pay, they're all going to walk away from it. And you brought up a point at our dental summit, Howard, that I thought was very perfect, man, was that, you sit there and wonder why you've been working for, 20 years in practice and you still got the same 2 columns of hygiene. Why didn't you open up another column and then fill it up? It's kind of like if you build it, they will come. So sometimes that high percentage of their revenues may be a symptom of them just having low revenues, and we look and see what we can do to increase that side of it.
It's the craziest thing in dentistry that when the dentist is making 35%, staff's making 25%, labs 10, supplies 5, mortgage 5, and you go in there and everybody's standing around waiting for a chair. Well, Margaret's got to empty, she got to dismiss the patient, then clean it up, then set it up, and then seat the next. So I'm going to sit back here on my hands for 20 minutes. Like, dude, chairs have no cost. And the people who make the most money, every time I see someone taking home 300 to 400, one of the number one things they all have in common is it doesn't matter if they schedule 2 chairs, 3 chairs, 4 chairs. They have 2 chairs that aren't on the schedule. So if I'm running 15 minutes late, they can seat the next patient. I can go over there and start getting them numb. I can finish my molar root canal, walk right over there, ready to go. And sometimes at the end of the day, every operatory has been destroyed. And I'll go home and drink beer, and they might stay there for hours cleaning it all up. You know what I mean? Yeah, you got to be chair long. And the endodontists and the oral surgeons are the best at it. Every oral surgeon and endodontist I know have ever met has 2 extra chairs for flow, for emergency, for walk-in, everything. I mean, it's just, chairs aren't your cost. So you said labor 25%, but that's aggregate, which includes benefits, payroll taxes, and what was the third thing you said? Benefits?
And comp.
And what?
Yeah. And just a gross comp, compensation, benefits, and payroll taxes.
Okay. Next big ticket, lab. Where do you like to see lab?
Well, that's kind of a moving target. Number one, what kind of office do they have? What kind of dentistry do they do? Do they have a CIRAC in their office? We have different standards for our CIRAC clients versus our lab clients. And, we suggest trying to have 3 labs so you can get some level of negotiation. A lot of dentists like to have more than just 3 labs for some reason. But we like to see labs, I'm going to say, run anywhere, depending on the dentist, non-CIRAC, I'm going to say 6.5% to 9%. That's where we'll see them run.
And that 9% high level, I really see that even on our CAD/CAM practices, it gets to 9%. But those are a lot of our high-end cosmetic docs that are doing 1.4 million of production a year. And so I'll say, hey, your labs are high, but it's due to how much cosmetic, full mouth rehabs you're doing, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and that's only about 5% of the dentists. I mean, 96% of all the crowns sent to Glidewell, who does 5% of the entire U.S. market, 96 out of 100 crowns are sent one at a time. So you say lab, if you're sending it to a lab, 6.5% is what you like to see, but it could be as high as 9% if you're doing a lot of full mouth rehabs and all that stuff. Where do you like to see the lab at if you own a CIRAC machine or an E4D chairside milling machine?
4.
Or no more than 4.
And do you put those CAD/CAM blocks, do you put that under lab or do you put that under supplies?
Yes, under lab. Yeah, under lab. So many people that we find and we see, they'll just put them in dental supplies, but that doesn't really give you the true cost, the true overhead of that category.
Germany does it the best. I love Germany. I mean, if you want to know the difference between Germany and the United States, go drive a Chevy and then go drive a Mercedes, a Volvo, a Porsche. The Germans are amazing people. And by the way, do you hear the Germans just found a 9.5 million year old human tooth in a cave? They just published it. Yeah. It was weird because when my whole life, every anthropology book you ever said, humans originated out of Africa, because every 1, 2, 3 million year old Homo sapien they ever found was in this one ridge on the eastern side of Africa. And now out of nowhere, Germany finds a 9.8 million year old tooth in a cave. So now every anthropologist is like, okay, everything we believed, you just turned it upside down. I mean, all physical evidence now is the oldest human was in Germany. But the Germans, the patient, the lab bills the patient, and the patient, the lab cost is between the patient and the lab. And the dentist said, we ain't gonna get in the middle of that, you know. And your physicians, I mean, how many times you got a physician, they sent you somewhere for an MRI or blood work or whatever. Everywhere they send you, you're the payments between you and wherever they send you, the physician doesn't get involved. So, oh, go get an MRI and I'll bill you. And that's the cleanest deal. And I'll tell you what, on these guys doing full mouth rehab cases, I can't tell you how many of them, their life changed. They just say to the patient, look, I can send this to a low-cost lab. I can send this to a medium lab, or I can send it to, I mean, there's Crown and Bridge labs that charge $400 a unit. Doesn't matter to me, because you're going to pay the lab fee. So here's my fees. And I know a lot of high-end doctors, and when they started getting all German and started having the patient have their labs bill their patients, my God, did their overhead drop.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
So what about supplies?
6.
Yeah, 6.5 max.
Okay. And what about, do you like rent or mortgage?
Okay, that's kind of a loaded question, because most of our practices, if I can jump in, most of our practices, we have them separate. Typically, they're building out in another real estate LLC. So they end up renting from themselves. But in essence, they're paying a mortgage as well. But we pull it out of the practice in almost all cases.
And yeah, in most cases, I would say 90% of the time, Howard, we would go with the dirt. You know, if they get the dirt, they're building another asset throughout the duration of their career. That it can be a revenue stream when they retire, or another cash injection to their nest egg. Again, there are some cases, especially in high-value commercial areas, where it just makes more sense to pay the rent and put other monies aside in other investments.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at. I mean, if you're downtown San Francisco or Manhattan, it's not even an option, you know.
Exactly.
But you know, I agree, because I think every doctor that sells their practice for $1 million could have sold it for $3 million if they just think about this. You sell your practice for $1 million, but if you carry the note, I mean, you screen this dentist. I mean, you wouldn't let your patients be treated by anyone. I mean, obviously this person worked for you, has great skills, all that. So then you carry the note at 10% for 10 years. There's another $1 million interest, and then when they pay off the practice, they're in that land and building. That location's been there 30, 40 years. The only variable in real estate is a tenant. I mean, you know, after Amazon, the number one, I mean, if you drove around Phoenix all day long, you think the number one store in Phoenix was space available. You know, I mean, because every time, Amazon does another billion, and anything that can be shipped to you in a box or a package and doesn't involve a human interaction is going online. And the only thing I see staying in these retail places is when a human needs to touch you, like a barber, a mani-pedi, a dentist, a physician, an accountant that needs to sit down with you. So the number one variable in real estate is a tenant. So after they pay off the practice and you made all that plus the interest, now you have a captive tenant to buy your practice, buy the land and building, and they're really in no room to negotiate. So, I mean, you could have an income stream for, if you didn't want to carry 10 years, 7 years, but 10% interest on the average practice, 750,000 is the average one that sells. So finance that at 10% for 7 years. In your walnut brains, can you figure out how much money that would be? What would $750,000 carried at 10% for 7 years? How much interest would that be total?
I'm guesstimating 375, 400,000.
Okay.
That's a guess.
Okay, so that's half. So you sold it for 750, and now you're going to make another half of that. And then you sell the practice to the land and building to a person who's in no space to negotiate. And the other reason, and why this is good for the kids, is I cannot tell you how many times I saw a dentist sell a practice to a kid who he knew didn't have the skills, the treatment planning, all this stuff. They sold him $1 million practice and then left. They're done. And now they're between, Bank of America or someone else. And the kid's first year does $600,000 in production. I mean, it's just upside down. But when a dentist carries, they got skin in the game. They're going to be going to their church. They're going to be at the back of the ward, handing out business cards, and at the mosque and the temple and the Catholic. I mean, and then when you get an upset patient because you're a young kid and you screwed something up, or you rubbed the patient the wrong way, then you can call old man McGregor, and he's known that lady for 20 years, and he smooths it all out. I really think dentistry, the way owners carried 30 years ago, was a far better model now than outsourcing that to these big Fortune 500 banks.
Well, also if they have the real estate, that gives them another level of comfort to carry that note. They have more leverage too. So that really brings the whole triangle to it. If they have the real estate, I think they have a lot more comfort tolerance to carry the note and realize that revenue, because hell, the banks are making all the money. So why can't the dentists make the money?
Well, the Phoenix, Arizona world record, what was that guy's name? Oh my gosh, he retired and went to Minnesota, but he had the world record. He carried, and the minute you were 90 days late on your payment, you defaulted, and it was his practice. He sold a practice 4 times in like 7 years. I mean, it was just the craziest thing I ever seen. I mean, he'd always tell everybody, "Oh my God, you got to carry," and then when you carry, you're torn between, do I help him make it work, or do I hope he just walks away from it 2 years so I can sell it again? So, and even if the owner won't carry, why don't you get the owner to carry half? Why don't you say, I'll go half, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whatever, and then you carry half? I just really, and especially in small towns, man, in small towns, doctor sells, then decides he's going to move and retire to Phoenix or Florida, and then it starts going south with either the staff or patients or whatever. The whole town of 5,000 smells a rat right out of the gate, and you literally lost your investment. Where if the old dentist would have been carrying, he'd have been working it. He'd been working your reputation management. I mean, screw Yelp reviews and Google reviews. In rural area, they're not on Yelp. They all know what's going on.
They go down to the corner drugstore and find out the scoop, and this guy's a good doctor. You should go to him, and they do that. And you talk about the building. When we start working with a new client, we look at that client, and we don't look at just exactly what they're doing today. We look at where we want them to be, when they get ready to retire, whatever age that is. And we consider the building one of the 4 cornerstones to successful retirement. And
one of the 4 cornerstones?
The 4 cornerstones is you own your own practice and sell, and that goes into your retirement pool. You own your building and sell, that goes into your retirement pool. And you set up a qualified retirement plan. And then the 4th one is just some other outside diversification of investments, which, real
estate, other investments.
Yeah, exactly. So we really get them to focus on the 4 cornerstones of retirement. And the sooner we can get them to focus on that, the better they are. We say, okay, when do you want to retire? 65. Okay, screw that. Let's retire at 58. And so we try to put them on a track to retire at 58 or 60, well before they want to. Not that they're going to retire then. We just want them to see as soon as they can that they have that ability, and we feel like they relax and they settle in, and then they become a better practitioner for it.
Well, I'm going to add a 5th cornerstone. We're going to turn this into an octagon.
Okay. It's a weird looking house, though. Okay.
Never, ever, ever get married unless you're going to make a baby. And if you do get married and make a baby, never, ever, ever get divorced. I see these kids walk out of dental school and they marry a classmate, and I'm like, is she pregnant? Is she showing? What's the rush? And it's like, why do you need to get a lawyer involved unless you're going to make a 25-year commitment with a child? And it's like, why? I mean, why would you get? I mean, imagine if you were my drinking buddy at the bar, and I said, "Hey, if you want to still be my drinking buddy, I want you to sign this contract. And if you ever quit drinking with me on Monday Night Football and the Sunday games, you got to give me your car." I mean, would you sign that?
No.
No.
Typically not.
No, but if we decided we were going to build a dental office together, or we're going to make a baby together, then you get a lawyer involved. But I just see these dental students getting married for just no apparent reason.
True story here. I was on a golf trip, and I only knew about half the individuals that I was on the golf trip, and they were mostly made up of, dentists actually. And so, after they got to know what we did, one of them turned to me, in between waiting on someone to hit the next shot. He says, "Well, what would be what you think is great financial advice? What two things? What two things?" And I said, "Well, live below your means." We talked about that earlier. And the other one, I said, "I always know a good marriage counselor. Stay with the one you're with."
Yeah, no doubt.
And of course, they just laugh, but there's true meaning there, because we've had clients that have been, pretty much decimated by divorce.
Yeah, and you know what's so cool about it now? What's so cool about it, as of 30 years ago, all the men were crying and whining. Now I get to meet all these women dentists crying and whining that their husband decided he was going to go back to school because he knew in his state that if he didn't have a job for 1 year, that helped him in his alimony and palimony and all this stuff. And now you see all these 50, 60-year-old women dentists who are now getting it. So I think now that the women are getting it, as bad as the guys, maybe some of those laws change. But I got to go back and have you qualify something. They understand own the practice, own the building, and they understand retirement planning. But you said qualified retirement planning. What's the difference between retirement planning and qualified retirement planning?
Well, qualified is a type of retirement plan, like a 401k. A lot of individuals, like a 401k, a defined benefit plan, a lot of individuals have been advised by clients that, a simple plan is all you need. A simple IRA type deferral, a SEP plan. And these types of plans, they just don't have the horsepower to get you where to go. And then we have other outside individuals that will tell clients, or hope to be future clients that we get, says, "Well, boy, those qualified plans are really complicated and they cost a lot of money." Well, money and cost is relative to benefit. If you get a greater benefit with a qualified profit sharing, defined benefit plan, defined contribution plan, even though it may be a little more complicated, if you get a greater benefit, then it's relative. And you just are able to sock away a lot more money. And if you cover your cost, you cover your cost. So to me, someone who says, "Boy, that's really complicated," is someone who's saying, "Well, I don't really fully understand it." Here's the thing, and I'll shut up and let Chris talk, but here's the thing about rocket science. Rocket science isn't hard if you're a rocket scientist. It's just what you know.
Well, nice. And how two things, talking about, taxes. One, you're talking about the alimony. If anybody's going to get a divorce, they need to do it before December 31st, because in this proposed tax changes, alimony is now deductible to the payor, so not the payee. So that means back in historically, you write a check for alimony, the spouse that's receiving the alimony has to pay the income tax on it. Now, effective January 1st, if this proposed legislation goes through, then it's taxed at the payor's bracket. So that's one thing. If you're getting a divorce, do it by the end of the year. And the other thing, with these qualified retirement plans, they're a great way to build assets that are they're untouchable. The IRS can't touch them. You can't lose them in civil courts. That's why O.J. Simpson wants to get back to Florida, has low income taxes, and he can draw on his NFL pension even though he's bankrupt, right? You can't touch pension monies no matter what you do. They're bulletproof. But heretofore. Again, it could always change, but heretofore. And then also, I always use the analogy, if I came to your front door, Howard, and I rang it and I said, "Howard, if you give me a check for $63,000 and I turn and I do 3 circles and hand you one right back right now for $72,000, how many times would you take that ride with me? And that's because of the tax strategy and the tax deductions if you have the right type of 401k plan that you're utilizing with your business. You know, there's a lot of different ways to build the 401k plans, whether they're cross-tested, integrated, safe harbored, etc. And that's based on employee demographics, which change all the time. So these 401k plans, if they're used the right way, they can drop 63 grand. And a better thing, 11 of that or 10 of that would go to their staff as an additional compensation model. They're taking care of their own, and they're saving 18 grand in taxes. So when you net the tax savings with the staff cost, they just made that $9,000 that I did the 3 circles and handed to you on your front porch.
Now can I give my tax advice?
Yeah.
If you have $350,000 in student loans, you owe $750,000 on a practice, you owe $500,000 on your house, and you're about to get divorced, I'd just buy a one-way plane ticket to the Bahamas or Sydney, Australia, and change my name and start over. I mean, wouldn't that be the best advice?
That's pretty good advice.
I mean, that is rock solid.
We've had some clients that have really considered
about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, when you go to Central, when you go to Mexico, Central and South America, and you go on Caribbean cruises and things like that, almost every time you see an American dentist down there, almost every time, they had their license taken away. And a lot of times it was for substance abuse. And they said, okay, so I'm getting my license. They said I got to go to treatment or this or that, or they're going to take it away because I'm addicted to Vicodin or whatever. And I thought, hell, I'm just going to move to Cabo, where you can buy it on the street and walk away from everything. And they say when you immigrate, that's why people have always been nervous about immigration, because when you leave your country, it's always for a job, for love, or you're running from the law. And they think about, for the average country, about 1 in 4 is running from the law. And usually, when you have American dentists practicing in Cabo or Puerto Vallarta or Mexico City, usually the law was the one. I want to ask you I want to open up a big can of worms. PPOs. A lot of people, when you're saying your labor should be 25%, lab 6.5%, rent or mortgage, a lot of dentists are going to come back and say, well, you don't understand, man. I used to get $1,000 for a crown, and now 80% of my practice PPOs, they're only paying me 600%. Their number one overhead is 40% of adjusted production. I mean, it's like, screw labor 25. My number one overhead is adjusted production of 40% off my usual and customary fee to the PPO fee. What's your thoughts on these PPOs?
I think the PPOs, it's a supply and demand thing. I think it's been documented for a long time now that the number one barrier to dental care is access to care, and it's not because they don't have a dentist around the corner, they can't afford it. Inflationarily, dentistry has gone up more than any other service segment over the past 20 years, higher than any other service segment out there that I'm aware of. So I think PPOs have their place. I think it's how many people are, they say the most expensive chair is the empty chair. I think the most expensive chair is the chair you're doing free work in, but then the empty chair. But that being said, it's supply and demand, Howard. And, we've done studies and models where I've taken multiple practices that were in network with 5 or 7 PPOs and in Medicaid. And then I took models with there had up to 4, and I took models up to 3, and then 2, and then 1. And the most profitable, it was astonishing. The most profitable practice was the one with the most PPO participation. Now, again, I think it is a practice-specific assessment. I think it's practice-specific based on their skill set, their locations, demographics, because I think there are some that can opt out of network and make more money and work less. I don't know how viable long-term that is, because I've seen some of those practices that were high-end cosmetic fee-for-service back in 2007, 2008 go out of business, because even people with discretionary cash flow prioritize their money more when they lost half of their retirement. So I think it's based on demographic and practice volume. But, man, I've seen some high PPO participations making lots of good money and giving a lot of good clinical care.
What dentists, the curse in healthcare and dentistry is that your costs are basically time and your and you bill in trinkets. Like a lot of people say, oh, well, the hospital, why did they buy me? Why did they bill my insurance $75 for a Tylenol? Because they don't have a room rate. I mean, if you stay at the Hilton, you know, they don't charge you for how much toilet paper you use, if you use the shampoo. They just have a night fee. I mean, so the billing in healthcare. So if you reduce your fee 40%, you just got to go 40% faster. But they're not going to switch from composites to amalgam on a crown and bridge. I mean, I see so many dentists that only need 30 minutes share time to do a crown. And then right next door in the same medical dental building, the next guy schedules an hour for every crown. And then there's 3 guys in the building that have scheduled an hour and a half for a crown, for every single crown, going back to Adam and Eve when they got out of dental school. It's like, dude, you've been doing crown and bridge for 30 years and you didn't get any faster, but you signed up for a PPO? No, I mean, look about it. You can numb the tooth and then go back in your office and play on Facebook for 10 minutes, then come back and go through more gloves and masks, and then drill, and then instead of you packing the cord for a minute, they go back and play on Facebook for another hour, and then they come back and take an impression, and then they leave, and the assistant takes a half an hour to make it temporary. And then there's dentists that walk in there, they numb, they set a timer for 4 minutes, they fill out the shade guide, then they pack the cord, and when the timer goes ding, they prep the tooth. And then when they're done prepping the tooth, they study their prep by making the impression, the temporary. And when they're trimming the margin of the temporary, they realize their margin ain't right and redo it. And when they're adjusting the occlusion on the temporary, they realize they don't have clearance. And they would have had a reduction coping if they wouldn't have made the temporary first. And then when the temporary is all perfect, then they take an impression, go do a hygiene check, come back, look at the impression with their loupes on, cement the temporary. Patient's done in 30 minutes. So if you're not on a PPO charging $1,000 for a crown and you schedule an hour and a half, and you are in a PPO only getting, say, $600 for a crown, but you do one every 30 minutes, now you're doing $1,800. Would you rather be the dentist charging $1,000 for a crown, taking an hour and a half, or charging $600 for a crown and taking 30 minutes?
Obviously.
I mean, you know, when you watch P90X, what's the first thing that guy says on every tape? Okay, let's bring it. I mean, you're here, you know, it's you know, working out. It's consistency, it's volume, and it's intensity. And when you're going to go do your P90X, that ain't the time to get lazy. And when you're in there doing dentistry, that ain't the time to get lazy and slow. I think a lot of overhead is because there's just a lot of lazy dentists that want their assistants to pack all the cord, make all the temporaries, give me long appointment times, and then they come to you with these crocodile tears. Why is my overhead so high? 'Cause you're lazy? Is that fair? Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think it's totally fair. You know, sometimes it's hard to say that you're lazy, but you know, we try, when we feel that, we try to get that a point across that, you know, you need to do more.
Well, just tell them that Howard said he's lazy. I mean, I know. See, it's really easy for me to say it. It's really hard for you to say it because they're your customers. But yeah, I mean, and what I also think every dentist should do more is, instead of spending so much time talking to all these other dentists on Dental Town and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, why don't you go start talking to the dentists in your own damn medical dental building in your own small town? Because so much of their thoughts, they think it's America, it's the economy, it's the Federal Reserve, it's China, it's everything but them. And then if they were hanging out more with the dentist in their neighborhood, then they'd realize, oh wow, despite who the president is and the interest rates and the deficit and international trade, that guy's crushing it, and he's only 100 yards from my office. So they got to get focused on the man in the mirror and not doing what intellectually lazy people do, which is go through their whole life blaming everybody else for all their problems, going through life as a victim. They need to get damn ownership. How do my homies contact you? What's the best way? And if they go to your website, MahanAssociates.com, what are they going to find?
At the website, however, they'll see, they'll find, contact us for them. They'll see the service mix that we offer. They'll see some quotes from some clients, and they'll be able to see kind of an overview of what we're about. And then they can always call the office, 615-883-7800, which is on the website as well, and ask to speak with Garland or myself, and we'll do a complimentary tax assessment and review where they're sitting with their taxes, which are a lot of times what move people to reach out to us. And we put our money where our mouth is. I mean, it's a no cost, we've had doctors come out and ask us to review their taxes, and we've given them a hit list of missed deductions, and they've gone back and given it to their tax preparer. Hey, that's cool, man. We're helping them save taxes.
Right.
So again, there's nothing out there for them to lose if they let us look at them and give them some insights.
I mean, routinely when we do a tax analysis or a review, we will save a client, and I comfortably can say this because we do it all the time. We save anywhere from the low 20s, and sometimes we had this client in Daytona, Florida. We're able to save him a little over $100,000 a year in taxes.
Easiest dollar earned is $1 expenses saved. Second easiest dollar earned is $1 taxes delayed. And the hardest damn dollar you'll ever do is to prep another tooth.
Right.
That's right.
So manage what you have first.
Anything else you want to say to my homies before you go?
Man, Howard, again, I just appreciate you coming to speak at our dental summit once again this year, man. Love hearing you every time. It's been a pleasure visiting with you today. And I think we're on the same mission, is to help dentists be more successful. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, man.
Do you think you'll make us an online CE course with Howard Goldstein?
With Howard Goldstein, I mean, we've been looking at going online with our CE curriculum.
Well, we put up 400 courses, and they've been viewed almost 1 million times. I mean, they're just crazy. The other thing about a lecture, it's all day. And a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to go and spend all day, and I don't know if I want to travel and stay in a hotel. But then when they see a course and it's just an hour, I mean, they can commit. It doesn't take much discipline to commit to an hour. And a lot of them, they're just on their iPhone. They got the Apple TV, so they're throwing it up on their big screen. But everybody that's put up an hour online CE course always tells me it was the best marketing they ever did in their life. And everything you talked about today, I just think it'd be amazing. You would educate so many dentists from around the world, and you get business out of it. So I just think, I hope you guys do that. Think hard about that, because that's really. And are you talking about putting online CE courses on your website?
That's what Chris is saying.
Yeah, on there, and I've heard Facebook Live is huge nowadays too, is what I've been told. Yeah.
Well, Facebook Live, you got to kill the time. So. The difference between time in Hawaii, California, New York City, archiving it is so much better. But how many video online courses are you going to put on your website?
Gosh, we probably have.
We have canned already, probably 30 cans.
So you already got the materials. That's perfect. So just take your best hour, put it on Dental Town, and then say if you want 29 more hours of this, go to Mahanassociates.com.
Okay.
It'll be try one, get one free. You know what I mean? Because we got the distribution. I mean, with 285,000 townies, that's huge. And after listening to you for an hour, they're gonna fall in love with you. They're gonna see your energy. They're gonna trust you. They're gonna like all that. And then say the next 29 hours are on Mahanassociates.com.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Yeah, man. Well, and also I wanted to extend a compliment and a thank you to Ryan, because he's been, the uber professional and helpful in helping us get all this set up. So again, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Oh my God, Ryan, are you going to get a big fat head now? You know what? It's an honor. When Ryan got out of college, he was so embarrassed by my first 100 podcasts. He says, Dad, I'm going to come back home, move in with you, and get that. And he has taken this show seriously, Ryan. The show's exploded since you come on board. I mean, I used to be sitting here, the audio was bad. I mean, I couldn't even listen to, I listened to some of those first 100 podcasts, and they're so hard to hear. And man, the green screen, you cleaned it up. And he said, Dad, women can wear makeup and mascara. You're so ugly. At least wear sunglasses so they can see less of you. He wants to put a sack over my head. He says, Dad, he said, you have a face for iTunes, not YouTube. But thanks for that, and thanks for moving back in home, Ryan. It has been a pleasure. So sorry, can I ask you an overtime question?
Yeah. Sure.
A lot of these millennials are stressed out of their mind because they got out of dental school, and her mom's a dentist, and her mom wants her to come practice with her, and she's working with her mom, and sometimes she just wants to go in the bathroom and scream and pull all her hair out and cry. What advice would you give to these young kids working for their dad or their mom or their 20-year-old brother What advice would you give them?
Boy, that is a very good
what do you
question.
guys do? You guys just go to mom and dad? I mean, when the shit hits the fan, do you call your mom, dad, sister, Aunt Lulu? What's your secret mediation service?
Well, in family businesses, man, solid contracts, clearly defined contracts make Thanksgiving and Christmas easy no matter what. And then, you got to have that go-between. I mean, honestly, in Garland and our operating agreement, if we have a disagreement, we've listed our father as the tiebreaker vote. We've never had to use him once. I've threatened him a few times with it. But, man, clearly defined contracts, expectations are very important in family businesses.
Yeah, especially if you get into a situation where you've got a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law type situation, it's even more important. And we see so many times when the mother and daughter, mother and son, whatever the case may be, and they want a contract, they get a contract, and then they never execute it. We've got 2 or 3 situations right now that we've drawn up what we think are, good working agreements, and they're never executed. And of course, you don't need an agreement if you don't have a problem.
When you go around the world, I mean, when you look at last names like, Smith, they were blacksmith. But when you go around the world, everybody talks about the Fortune 500 all day long. But but most people work for a family business. I don't care if your dad's a goat hoarder in Somalia. When I go to these dental schools, at least a quarter to a third of the class, I say, how many of you have a dentist in your family? Mom, dad, uncle, aunt, someone. 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 3 hands come up, and it doesn't matter if you're in New Delhi, Tokyo, San Paulo, Rio, or Kansas. And family business is the majority. And I think it's romantic as hell. I only worked for 2 people. My dad for 10 years. That was the love of my life. Best time I ever had, most I ever learned. And then I worked for myself 30 years. And it has just been an honor. 3 of my 4 boys have worked for me at some level for some time. And I just think family business is everything. But what you said is so profound that, if you were in the Fortune 500, you'd have a lawyer and a contract. And you go to an HR guy, you'd have an attorney, you'd have this in writing. I mean, hell, even when you go on the people's court, the first damn thing they say on TV, do you have a receipt? Oh, no, I didn't save my receipt. Oh, whatever. And then these guys have this big feud with their dad. I mean, I have a good friend of mine who's a dentist. His dad's a dentist. They went 10 years without talking when he walked away from that practice. A lost decade. And you got to have a contract. And same thing, when you're dating, when you're in love and you're hormonal and all that millennial young youth crap, no contracts, no marriage. But then when you decide you're going to have a baby or you're going to work for your mom or you're going to, buy a practice, then you need a damn good attorney and a damn good contract.
Yep.
Yeah. And what percent of your dentists get prenuptial agreements?
Well, when we're involved, I would say close to 50% or 40%. Now, a lot of times, that horse is already out of the barn before we get involved.
Yeah, and you know what? Divorce is 3 ways. Money, it's over 3 subjects, a third, everything I read. Money, sex, and substance abuse. And when you go back to all 3 of those, because they're not talking about their money, their sex, or their substance abuse, they're not addressing it, they're not communicating about it. And when you sit there and you feel like you can't float the idea that we get a prenuptial agreement, who are you going into business with? Really?
Yeah.
You can't talk about a prenuptial agreement, but you're going to be married for the rest of your life, and if it goes south, lose half of everything you own? If you can't communicate about a prenuptial, then you can't get married and communicate about money, sex, and how much beer you're drinking a night.
That's right. That's right.
That's good. There you go.
All right. Well, hey, seriously, thank you for your 50 years, half-century combined service of dentistry. Thank you for all that you do for dentistry, your clients, and it's just been an honor to be able to podcast you guys.
Hey, thank you again for the opportunity, Howard. Look forward to working again in the future.
All right, buddy. Have a rocking hot day.